Hello, everybody. A very good evening to all of you, to all our audiences watching us here on the Zoom platform, as well as many of you watching us on Facebook. This is Cross Currents presented to you by India Foundation for the Arts. As most of you would know, India Foundation for the Arts is an organization that has been making grants and has been implementing projects across the country. Over the last 27 years, we have enabled more than 600 projects in the areas of arts education, arts research, arts practice. We also work with archives and museums across India. And from all these projects, we have a vast corpus of outcomes that have emerged. And these are the outcomes that we share at various kinds of platforms. So before the lockdown and before the pandemic happened, we would have physical events. And post the pandemic, we have moved a lot of our grant showcases online, and here we are presenting Cross Currents. It used to be called Throwback Thursdays earlier, but now since January, we are here bringing to you a new avatar of grant showcases that are called Cross Currents. And as you can guess, Cross Currents is really this platform to enable um, all kinds of larger conversations around the projects that we have supported, also putting them in the broader context of different kinds of artistic confluences that are happening across the country. So welcome to all of you for this second edition or the second episode of Cross Currents. Now, Cross Currents has been imagined as a curated series of events. So we started in January. So across January, February, and March, we are going to have a running theme, a larger umbrella theme under which we have curated these events. And so every quarter, there's going to be a new theme that we'd like to bring into this conversation. The umbrella theme that we have for this quarter, or January, February, and March, is play as practice. And under this theme, larger theme, we are today discussing cities as the city as the playground. This is quite something, quite a interesting topic that is also very close to IFA's heart, in the sense that, of course, we do support different kinds of projects, but IFA also has a very keen interest in the city, because we do run Project 560 ourselves, and that is something that we've been passionately running for the last 7 years or so. So understanding or going with the pulse of the city is something that all of us at IFA have deeply enjoyed. There have been lots of challenges there as well, but also these are challenges of working with the city. And the city itself is such a dynamic space. It's in a constant state of flux. Spatially, it is in a state of flux. Our identities are in a state of flux. Everything is constantly moving. We are jostling for space all the time. In some ways, it's kind of a battleground, really, where every day is some kind of a juggling, a jostling with the city itself. But can this battleground also become a playground? How are artists actually engaging with this city that is in this constant state of motion? And can cities become playful, or can we have playful or playable cities in some ways? So that's the conversation. That's really the idea that has brought all of us here today. Um, Before I introduce the artists that are here with us, just some simple housekeeping rules for today. We will have this conversation. We'll have three of our grantees presenting their projects to you, and then we will go into a discussion, and the floor will be open for questions. So whether you're watching us on Zoom or you're watching us on Facebook, please do feel free to share your questions here in the chat box, and we will have them conveyed to the panelists here, and they will take your questions. So yeah, We have with us today Vaibhav Dutt, Shumona Chakrabarti, and Nilanjan Das. Welcome, all three of you, and thanks so much for being with us today. All three panelists today have been doing really important, fascinating work with regard to cities, and that's the reason we have them here with us. We will first have Vaibhav talk to us about the project that he did. Just to briefly introduce Vaibhav, Vaibhav works at the intersection of law and data analysis, and he has been designing and implementing tools for urban planning and governance with focus on participatory planning. Vaibhav received a grant from the IFA to under Project 560, and I welcome Vaibhav to take us through this grant and tell us how they actually created a play space within the city of Bangalore. Over to you, Vaibhav.
Thank you, Sumana. It's great to be here, and I'd like to get started because I have a time limit. And I just wanted to check with everyone if I'm audible before I start. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll just share my screen, and I'll take all of you through a presentation. Yes. Is it visible to everyone? Okay. So at Fields of View, if you see the name that I've used is called The Shapes of Our Breath. Right? And this is very important because one of my colleagues pointed out that in the last year, when there was so much angst with respect to the pandemic, right, where literally the air that we breathe became so difficult to share with each other, what is it that we could share? And I think she very beautifully put it out in words, right? Saying that even if we can't breathe the same air anymore, maybe we can still share words, or words that are the shapes of our breath. So that's the thought I want to start with, because all our projects, all our work has been affected by COVID-19. So I just wanted to point that out right at the beginning. At Fields of View, I think I just wanted to give a very quick introduction, only because we want to talk about play as practice. And at Fields of View, our very focus has always been to use methodologies related to play in issues of public policy. Our focus has always been urban planning, and we've recognized that over years, a lot of work has been done through which people understand what is the necessity, what is the work that is to be done. So we all know that participation is important. We all know that delivery of public services is important. Now what we are trying to address is how do we do this? And there we have realized play is a big factor. And I think after our presentations, what we are going to do is have a greater discussion in terms of how play impacts the way in which we have designed some of our projects, as well as thought about how our interventions can help. But for the presentation's sake right now, I think I just want to look at a very explicit form of play, which is games, because we can use play as a verb in other forms of tools as well. But one of our biggest focuses on urban planning in Fields of View has been to use games to tackle the how of participation, to tackle the how of inclusivity. And so we realized that games can help us do a number of things. They provide a very non confrontational environment to talk about myself. It's often difficult to fail when I'm having a discussion with somebody. It's hard to lose in a debate. But it's okay to lose at a game, to not win. We can laugh about it. And we've realized over many years that that is a very important thread to tie around what work we want to do, because only if we can bring stakeholders who see that there is logic and there is reason in what we are doing is why they will be involved. So I'll start with the project that we did under Project 560. which is called a game which we developed over the last year and a half called Kattukate. And Kattukate, as some of you might know, means fairy tale in Kannada. And very simply, the objective of the game is that you are Bangalore and we want to know your story. That's the objective we started with because our idea was that there are narratives of every city. And we know that the narratives of cities are often written in history books. So if I were to ask any of you what the narrative of Bangalore is, you would all tell me that we know about Kempe Gowda, who started it. There are the Vodiyas from Mysore. And the British came and set up cantonments. And then the government of India started their initiatives after independence. And while that narrative may not be incorrect, there are also so many other narratives we realized that are diverse, that are often never uncovered. And we recognize that everyone has a different experience of living in the same city, across caste, across class, across gender. And those are the kinds of experiences we wanted to capture. We wanted to understand that all the stereotypes that we have about a city, right? In this case, Bangalore. If it's a pensioner's paradise, if it's a city of lakes or gardens or of beautiful weather, right? Or of always a pleasant climate. Is that true everywhere in the city? Is it true for everyone who lives in the city? And those are the kind of questions we wanted to answer. So we thought, how can we do this? And we designed this game called Kattukate. And we wanted to have these sessions with a number of different audiences. So this is actually one of the first sessions that we had with the Domestic Workers Union. And here we had participants who were all women, all domestic workers. They were from Karnataka, but also migrants who had come from other states. And the reason we were doing this session was we were using the tool to collect their stories, to collect their experiences with respect to their work. So we wanted to understand that given their work, what kind of challenges do they face in employment? Or that given that many of them came from outside the state, we were told that many of them faced a challenge in terms of the kind of rice that was available. Because what they would eat in Bengal or back in Orissa is not something that is easily available in Bangalore. But they would still have to eat it. And it's such a comfortable thing to come back and be able to eat something that you like. But even that became a challenge, other than the usual things that we can imagine in terms of language or in terms of getting a house easily. And the game was really, really impactful for two reasons. I think one, which Sumana mentioned herself, was the idea of it being in a physical space. I think it was really crucial for us to build the game in that way that people could have fun with it. Right? People could run around. So, which is why we always use big spaces. You could run around from corner to corner. You had to set up things quickly. You had to fight with the devil, who is a character in the game. You have to find out that, say, which stories you can collect. You can steal other team members. And I'll show you some of these other things, but I don't want to go into the mechanics of the game as such, but rather talk about our experiences. And that's why the physical medium really became important. It became important where you could brush against each other, you could just go and laugh together and even tell each other the stories. To listen to that, say, in a digital form would not have the same impact. Another session that we did was with a bunch of students, undergraduate students at St. Joseph's College. And there, again, the reason we did it at St. Joseph's College in an undergraduate program was because the students had come from many different states. So some of them had come from Delhi, many of them had come from Kerala, many were there from other South Indian states as well. And it was very interesting to see that we were trying to capture information about their experiences under six broad categories. So we were looking at food, employment, housing, safety, uh, festivals, and housing. So, in all these six categories, there were players who had to play the role of a listener, where you had to listen to a story. You had to play the role of a teller, where you ran around two different counters and you told your story. And there were builders, as you can see in the second picture on the side, that for each story you tell, you get a token, which is represented by the icons, and you have to fill your mosaic. Now, a very interesting thing that we tried out, and this is, I think, very crucial with respect to a city, is the concept of insider and outsider. It is something we tried to explore through the game, which is to say that every time a listener would listen to a story, they had to make a determination that whether this person is a listener or is an outsider or an insider. So it was an entirely subjective determination because we did not want to place any value judgment on who can be an insider. But what we were seeking to do was to understand who feels a part of Bangalore or who does not feel a part of Bangalore. Because, say, studies and research has often shown that people sometimes consider themselves to be part of a city when they get documents from the city, right? Such as, say, a ration card or a voter ID card, or sometimes they consider themselves to be part of a city when their children go to school. But we also spoke to somebody in the domestic workers union session who had been living here in Bangalore for 30 years. Her children had gone to school here, she'd been living here. Yet she said that her home is still back in Tamil Nadu. It's still not in Bangalore. And I think one of the things we were not able to do due to the pandemic is to explore this theme of insider and outsider further, simply because we couldn't do more sessions after this. So after the sessions with St. Joseph's College, we just couldn't do more sessions because there was no possibility of having physical congregations with so many people, with 50 people at a time. And and so what we were trying to understand in terms of who feels like a part of the city or who doesn't remained at the stage where we were still wondering as to where that will lead us. And so that question is still open for us. We are still thinking and exploring of ways we can do that now that there is a possibility of congregation once more. In the meanwhile, however, how we are looking at the game is that at least can we ensure a sharing of stories, these stories. We can't do more sessions. We can't find out, say, if there are myths about what an insider is or who's part of a city. But can we share these stories? And that we are planning to do through a digital medium. The reason being that at least you get some private space to engage with the story. That you get a little moment where you can go to the website, you can listen to an audio recording on your own, which is not public. And so you can at least understand some aspects of where these people, whoever they are, whether they are students who are living in PGs or they are domestic workers, and how their experience of Bangalore may be very similar or different to others or to ourselves in Bangalore. These are just some of the artifacts that we use. And I just want to point out that because we're thinking about play as an underlying methodology for any tool that we build, even a game, it's important to say, think about the use of colors. It's important to use a lot more visual symbols so that it's easier to engage, it's easier to interact, and it does not require textual literacy. So often what we use is we use big icons, and we've made the game in three languages, in English, Hindi, and Kannada. And so we have some cues. So if you look at the picture here at the bottom right, where it says "Rehne ki jagah," so those are cues that we print in really large blow up posters and we put it on the walls. So if somebody is just coming to tell a story, it's just simple cues for them to look and remind that, okay, I can tell a story about जहाँ हम अभी रहते हैं, या फिर हमारा मकान मालिक के बारे में, about your landlord, or where do I stay right now. So it helps you build a story. And I think that's the idea, to think that how are we going ahead with interacting with the city. So given that I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation that our objective has been to improve policy making, to improve public policy, a big part of that is conducting research. But we've also realized that apart from conducting research, it's important to do that in different ways. One, which is that there is data that is often unable to be processed, that data we cannot collect, which is intangible, which is, I would say, not very clear. It's a bit fuzzy. We don't know, we can't get it on a survey. We can't get it as numbers in terms of, say, what is my preference, or that I don't feel safe, for example. That is information that we can collect through games. And we have also done that through some of our other games. So, for example, this is called the City game, where we just different people come together and they build the city they want to live in. And we've done these sessions across the world, hundreds of sessions. So in the Netherlands, in Karnataka, in Sri Lanka, and often the kind of experiences are not very different. So if you see the picture on the top left, we did a session with 400 girls from schools across Karnataka in Mangalore. And it was very interesting because with them, they themselves wanted to change the game a little bit and talk about how we can think about migration as part of, say, a game like this. So while there are people who are building a city, often new people come in who may not be as invested in building the city they have come to. So then how do you negotiate the priorities of the city? So that is something that we also consider. There are a couple of other games which I will not go into right now. But I just want to close my presentation with just one thought, which is that if you're thinking about play as practice, it's equally important for us to think about play as much in terms of how it manifests in research in games, but also how it is a process for us while we are doing our work, whether as artists or as lawyers. And I think this is important because my background is in law and I have studied law. So my exposure to art or to uh, ideas which are less tangible, which are less formal, has not been great from the start. So my training is not in that. I'm inclined to always think about things in black and white or in more formal terms. And I think that's exactly why this really appeals to me. Right? I have even worked on urban planning before, and I'm always trying to understand it if I take a legal lens to see what is formal, what is informal. I can still think of it in a perspective of addressing social inequality, but it is always in the realm of what the law is, how regulation works, what formality is. And what often gets missed up is the personal, is the narrative of everyone's experience, is the narrative of that a city is not linear, it's not a circle, it's not a rectangle, and it can't be planned away through diagrams and through computer simulations. And I think that's why I have realized that play is extremely crucial and valuable to be used to uncover these aspects of a city. Thank you. I'll stop here.
Thank you, Neelan. Thank you, Vaibhav. Hello, can you hear me? Is, am I audible? Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Vaibhav. That was really interesting, and because Project 560 has been happening in Bangalore, and we at IFA have been very closely observing all the projects that have been happening here. It was really fascinating to hear from you how this project has taken shape. We'll now move on to our next speakers. We have Shumona Chakrabarti and Nilanjan Das here, both of who have been integral to a project called Chitpur Local. And IFS supported two editions of this larger project. Um, to briefly introduce them, Shumona is the founder of Hamdasti, and she has been using a lot of participatory processes to work with diverse kinds of communities, and this has been very crucial to her work. Nilanjan Das is a printmaker, and he's a multidisciplinary artist, and he works a lot with public spaces, the idea of public spaces. So both of them have been part of the Chitpur local. I'll invite Nilanjan and Shumona to take us through their project, please.
Thank you so much, Sumana, and thank you, Weber, for your really enlightening and engaging presentation. So, like Sumana said, Niranjan and I, we both represent Hamdasti and this project, Chitpur Local. Hamdasti was started in 2014 with the idea of sort of testing what would happen if artists worked out of community spaces, a police station, a local school, a local library, and how could artistic engagements sort of create spaces for aesthetic encounters or playful encounters or for community engagement in such community spaces. So it's kind of structured like a fellowship where an artist comes, identifies local collaborators and works with them for over a year on certain projects. So since 2014, we've had almost 3 iterations of Chitpur Local, with 15 artists, over 100 community collaborators. And these are year-long engagements. So something or the other keeps happening throughout the year as the projects evolve, as the kind of collaboration deepens and evolves, and culminates in a community art festival. Around this, like you can see, we have lots of community events, open houses, that then structure the dialogues before and after these larger festivals and community programs. So this was really the central question of what would happen if if we embedded these spaces with aesthetic encounters, with aesthetic experiences, with artistic practice, and play is a very important part of that, we feel. So Chitpur Local is one of our main projects, is the main driver of the projects that we've been doing at Hamdasti, because we've been focused in this one neighborhood, which basically, is across is to the left and right of a central artery called Chitpur Road in the city. So Chitpur, just to give you some context, happens to be one of the oldest roads in the city. And it's also a very diverse area because there are many different communities that live sort of cheek by jowl in this almost bazaar-like atmosphere. And it runs parallel to the river. So you can imagine there were many different communities who came and settled here along this road. And also very many different income groups, caste groups, religious groups, etc. What's also interesting about Shibpur is that it had this history of the arts being a part of the community. So whether it was in the courtyards of these palatial homes or in the craft studios that surrounded these larger mansions and families. So it has this certain very unique public spaces, public-private spaces, and also local art forms that we've engaged with and worked with over the last 5 or 6 years. It's a hub for printing, for publishing, for local theater like Jatra, other crafts like jewelry making, musical instrument making, and all of that. So that was just a very sort of brief and sort of quick introduction of otherwise a very diverse and complex neighborhood. So I almost simplified it a little bit there. But I think I just wanted to set the context so that we can then jump straight in and look at some of the projects that that really engage with this idea of play. And in fact, this idea of play was a part of this narrative of an artist being a part of a community space right from the inception almost of this project. So I'll hand it over to Nilanjan because we both started on this journey together, and it was one of his projects that really put play at the heart of the year-long experience that he did with students of the Oriental Seminary School, which is a government school in the area, working as well with the craftspeople. So through his project, we'll sort of see this kind of the tool of like the game functioning as a kind of aesthetic or artistic tool. So I'll hand it over to Neil to discuss that as one of, as an example of one of the early projects that were funded by IFA at Chitpur. So over to you, Neil.
Hi. So yes, as Supana said that this memory game is one of our first initiative that we did in Chitpur, and our primary agenda was to understand the local history and culture, and also to engage with the local neighborhood and the people over there. So as Supana said that we started with the local government school and collaborated with the students and started and tried to start initial workshop with the students about the local history and culture, and also try to teach them some printmaking techniques. And after this initial workshop, what we did is try to map the different sites. So we go with the student in the neighborhood and try to explore different local histories, local stories. And we talk, and the students also talked with the local people from different working groups, and collected so many stories. So uh, people like this particular shop is a very 100 years old publishing house. People from different working class, as I said, craft people over there. So yeah, so each and every exploration was very unique. And then after each and every exploration, we go back to the school uh, and try to do a very interactive session with the students, so that they can like finalize the whole the stories they collected, and try to draw figure and signages out of it. And so can you just go to the next slide? Yeah, so these are like two examples in this context. So the students collected these stories and write about a brief about the story, and then they try to like draw figures and signages out of it. So it's very I think it was a very wonderful experience, that how they exploring the space and they imagining it, and from there they're transfer these stories into a visual language. So yeah, so when we have a certain amount of this amount of stories, then we thought maybe we can design a game. It's in a format of memory game. So we designed this 2 series of card. So the first series of card uh, has the a small a brief history of the sites, and a picture of the sites. And the second row contains the uh, signages that made by the students. So the idea is to you have to match the you have to match the signage with the first row of the card. So yeah, so this is how we design the game, and with the students obviously. And then we do our first iteration uh, at a Ruak. It's a public space on the in the neighborhood. And all the students were very excited. And the local people and local girls school students and also their parents started joining the game very organically. And we also designed the game in such a way so that the winner could win a prize. And to claim their prize, they have to go back to the one of the sites that we have in our cards, so that they can explore the sites themselves in person. And also the Ruak where generally men played cards. It's a very main dominated place, but with the participation of the girls school and their parents, that gender boundary uh, became blurred, you know. So yeah, can you go to the next slide? So after the first iteration, as a printmaker, I thought maybe I could transfer these digital cards into the manual process of printing. And thus I started to collaborate with the local crafts person. There are lots of different crafts people over there. So there we have block makers. I collaborated with block makers. Also collaborated with rubber stamp makers and different printers. And finally we came up with a very beautiful set of uh, cards with limited editions, as you can see on the right. And we also made a wooden box, and we used to take all the stuffs for the game and put it in the box and move around to the corners of the neighborhood, in the different blocks, in the different places, in different veranda, so that we can engage with different people. uh, and uh, and the students can uh, can talk about their experience, talk about and they can engage with the local people more and more. So yeah, this is the structure of the game. Yeah, so this is one of the side we played the game. So we are still continuing our project in the neighborhood, definitely, but we expand our geographical location a bit. And the present project is at Ghat. It's a kind of a river bank. Um where so we the project is about gender interaction and intimacy in public space. So we designed these two beautiful puppet and asked the local people and also the lovers and the couples who used to visit the place to like play with it and create a gesture and on what they think about how much intimacy could be possible in Indian public space. So what I think is about questions like these are sometimes really like hard, like asked too hard directly and to get a like an answer. So I what we try to do is try to find a middle path. Always try to find a way to uh, a very playful way so that people can go beyond their mindset, what their mindset is actually. So yeah, and also as Vaibhav said, his background is on law, and I'm a very typical background of art college. So from that perspective, I always try to go beyond the limit of filmmaking and the like a gallery type of practice. So I was always wanted to make it more accessible to the viewers, and from that common ground, I think I met with Sumana and we started working together. Yeah, thank you to you, Sumana.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks so much. So yeah, like Neil was saying, that kind of began the one of the things we saw about games was the idea of being able to create spaces for sharing stories, untold stories,
Yes.
the stories that were perhaps left out or ignored. The second one was it created this open ground or this, this space, the space of play creates possibilities for people to break out of existing patterns of behavior or question existing patterns of behavior and creates a safe space to do that when you create a space of play. So we saw that happening through his projects very strongly. And so while the final outcomes of the projects are also games, the final, I mean, the projects are, or the final interaction or the aesthetic experience is a game. We also, I feel, really believe, if I mean, even in Nilanjan's project with the students and now the project that I want to share, you will see that even the process of creating the game is a process of play as well, and why we think that also is important as artists, and as people working in public spaces with communities, and how that opens up a more meaningful interaction when you finally get to the game, when you finally get to the this process of play leads to an engaged interaction during the final game. So so the project that I kind of excuse me, wanted to talk about is called Jora Bagan Encounters. It was a collaboration. It was in the second iteration of Jitpur Local, and it was in collaboration with the traffic police. And this is the beautiful, police station that they are housed at. And the idea was, the kind of one of the initial ideas of Hamdasti, that what would happen if artists were working in a police station? What kind of spaces could we create? What kind of encounters would we create? And how would we work there? What would be our process of engaging there? And I think the concept of play also came into that. So here we wanted to we had explored local stories, we had tried to push the ways in which we engage and interact in public spaces. But we also wanted to translate that into different kinds of dialogues and exchanges in public spaces, in community spaces. So that was a little bit of the reason why we incorporated this idea of play right from the beginning. So if I think back at the start of the project, this was the officer in charge, Alok Shannal, who's now associate commissioner of the police. He was, a very open and willing collaborator, but I think there was this process of back and forth to identify what our shared values are. And there again, I think play comes into the question of play comes into being, because there's when you're working in communities, when you have some urgent needs, there's one way of doing things where you're guided by reason and intellect and a kind of certain rationale where you're focused on certain outcomes and solutions. But there's another way of thinking where you want to engage with people for the sake of engagement. You want to have art for the sake of art. So I think that was a kind of dialogue that I was having and I was bringing to the space versus his perspective, where he wanted to really use this opportunity to educate people about traffic rules, but I wanted to use the space to get people to question and to challenge and to to question the notions of how we navigate the city, what are the rules that we use to navigate the city. So even this balance, this finding this balance when you're working in a community, or working with people who have very urgent needs on the ground, or needs that may be different from yours, is to really negotiate this idea of what is a kind of direct approach versus an approach where you are taking a more convoluted and a convoluted path. And play, I think, forms that kind of find that space of play, is that space in between both these approaches when you're when you are collaborating. So that's something we tried. Within play also, I think we all are forced to take on new roles. So when I was trying to create this final game, which was the Jora Bagan encounter, I tried to get the police officers to think of themselves in roles that they otherwise occupy as policemen. So you can see when you're playing the game, you go through the station following the string, and the string leads you to certain questions and certain challenges. In this particular challenge, it says everyone is looking forward to having chicken curry tonight. So you stop by the bazaar. You hear that there are plans to demolish it soon. Should it be removed? So here, at every point, the police and their audiences, the visitors to the game, had to debate these questions and then decide to move ahead or not. And they lose time. Time is the element that you try to collect in the game. You lose time as you're moving through this game. In this game, the reason we mentioned this chicken curry was because one of the police officers shared his recipe for no oil chicken curry with me when I was asking him what they cook after hours and how they hang out together and how they party together when they're relaxing. So this, getting the police officers to play this game not only as players, as co-participants in a game, but also as people who are cooks, who are chefs, who are making food for their friends, I think is again an important part of the process that I was trying to follow when I was building this game with them as well. And finally, when they're playing the game, they also have to take on the role of being a co-player and a co-participant in the game. So I think using play as a process helps us as when you're working in collaboration to take on roles that you're usually not comfortable taking on, and that itself again creates, I think, helps develop that dialogue or that engagement that you're finally working towards. um, Creating a game is also like the idea of a game or idea of play is almost like having a structure that liberates. So you have a structure, but within that there's a lot of possibility, there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of not knowing within that structure. So the game, I tried to create a game where there was room for the police officers to share their stories of their experiences on the street. So every time, sometimes when you won a reward in the game, you would get to listen to a story shared by the police officer. So it was this experience of building a game also was a way of creating space and of creating this opportunities for people to come and inhabit that space. Because I don't think I could have, it sort of helped me sort of create a platform that different people could occupy and own in different ways. So I think that also, when you're using play as a strategy for also working with people, that also becomes an important uh, you know aspect of the collaboration when you're building this. And finally, to create unfamiliar experiences, for people who are participating in the game, because that's what ultimately maybe a game should do. It should help you sort of defamiliarize what you're already used to do something with. So this is a very familiar office that the police officer, this is his main head office. So he was used to coming here every day. He was used to interacting in a certain way. But in the game, his role was to tell people the history of this office and the architecture. So he was the tour guide. When people would come into the office, he would tell them, that was again a prize of the game as a part of the process. When you came into his office, he tells you about the glass, the tiles, the Belgian mirrors, etc., etc. So again, you're entering a police station where you usually expect to have a certain kind of encounter, but you're trying to create, I think the process of play allows you to do that, where you can create, unfamiliar experiences within the familiar, within the expected. So while, I sort of described the game to you, and the process of the game, but even, and what happens when you play the game, what happened also in the process of building the game was something I thought, we tried to apply principles of play, which we had learned from our work at Chitpur, to this experience. And just, just to summarize, to create new roles, to create unfamiliar experience, to make space, and to find a balance between reason and rationale, and the idea of just making art for art's sake. So you sort of find that balance in the two. So that was, I think, something we learned as we moved along, something we started really appreciating. Another thing, and just to briefly close, like Neil said, currently in our last iteration of Chitpur Local, we received some support from the Khoj International Artists Association, working on these ideas around gendered interactions in public spaces. And that again was a really opportune place to use this idea of play. So what I wanted to show by showing you this second project that I wanted to talk about, which is called Adorsho Purush Ki. So who is an ideal man, or what is an ideal man? It was a project I did in collaboration with a men's bodybuilding club. So it's a gym. It's called Hat Khola Bam Shomiti. And again, the idea was to use this game, use the form of a game and the process of building a game itself as a way of deepening dialogue about masculinity. So when you enter the club, all the walls are full of symbols of Netaji and Bajrang Bali and Rabindranath Tagore and, people lifting weights. And so it came, it almost came organically from this space itself, the conversation. But what we did again, we really focused on the process. So we had several iterations of the project, much like Neil's first project. We had many iterations of this project. So the dialogue, hoping that the dialogue would also deepen as we played the game over and over again, and the game took its own form and moved forward. So just to briefly talk about this project, it was this club. First, I went and spoke to people. Then, through their conversations, a lot of symbols of masculinity came up, like Bajrang Bali, or like the Indian flag, or like a bottle of beer, or chicken. Or in Bengal, the shopping bag is a very like symbol of masculinity. So the shopping bag, the bajaret bag, these are the symbols that came up. And we would do this. We would take this light box and ask people to recreate an image of man. Of an ideal man using these symbols. You can see some symbols are rejected, some symbols are included. Now, this was itself a very interesting game. It was very interesting interaction, but we felt like the conversation didn't really go deeper. We didn't have a challenge to push back on these symbols. If you're including a flag, why a flag? If you're leaving out beef, why are you leaving out beef, in your image of an ideal man? And so we said, okay, now we have to further like deepen this interaction and do another iteration of this game. So then what we did was we created, using these symbols, we created different tiles and we created a trail through the courtyard of the club. And every time you land on a tile or you land on a symbol, you have a dice which you roll, and then you have to either give a you have to sort of debate on that symbol that you land on. So there are three things. You can share a memory related to the symbol, you can share some advice related to the symbol and its message, or you can present a counterpoint or disagree with what the symbol represents. So you can see that there were, the women who lived in the houses around, as well as the young men who, old and young men who go to this gym, were engaged in this discussion. And that's why we feel like, while we really appreciate the power of, play, this engaged process and this multiple sort of engagements around these ideas through play was really meaningful, because in the end, as you can see, I just sat down and then they were conducting the game, and the dialogue was completely taken over by the people of that club, and I just sort of sat back and relaxed while it was going on. And the members of the club were facilitating this game. So you can see here a better picture of the trail through the courtyard of the club, and at the back you can see all the symbols of masculinity that they had made from the previous iteration. So I just want to share this project as also a note on the kind of process of play that takes place in some of the projects that we've been doing at Chitpur and in the neighborhoods and communities around it. And finally, I guess this is something we'll discuss moving forward, but why do we need spaces for play? And that brings us back to our original question of why did we want artists to work in police stations or communities or schools? And I think Niranjan's projects and my projects sort of maybe hopefully touched upon these few themes, that play can make space for untold stories, it can create space for unusual interactions, create space for dialogue, and maybe through that present new imaginations of how we use our public spaces, what stories represent us, what masculinity means to us, how we use our public spaces. So perhaps through these games we arrive at certain, at least, we role play or we enact certain new possibilities as well of how our city is. And it comes back to this idea of the city as a not just a public space but a public domain where you encounter the other, where you engage with different perspectives, where and where you're forced to sort of make a judgment on yourself as well, in this kind of public forum or public domain. So I guess that's the kind of space that we hope we can create. Those are the kinds of spaces we hope we can create through play, through aesthetic practice, through artistic practice. So I'll end there, and then look forward to a dialogue and discussion with Sumana, with Vaibhav, Nilanjan, and all of you.
Uh, Thanks so much, Shumona and Nilanjan, for that fascinating presentation. Actually, thanks to all three of you now that we come back to this conversation. What is interesting is how all the three of you have touched upon the importance of play and how play makes it a safe space. It's really the space that lightens up things. But I just want to go back one step. Let's go to the back end of how we normally move through a city with a kind of a flyover approach. We don't want to engage, we just want to glide past the city. We really don't want to go into any of those gullies. It's too much hassle for all of us. So in a context that where we are more and more taking these larger sort of flyover kinds of roads and not engaging um, uh, with the real city or even the underbelly of the city, there's a lot that can happen through play, right? So um, but if we go one step backwards and see, there are several hundreds of ways of engaging with a city. You could be doing a research project, you could do an exhibition, you could do a performance, you could do a lot of things. But what is that crucial point that triggers the idea that okay, this can only be done through a play? What is that one key thing or a few key things that say okay, play can be the only process of doing this or engaging with the city? There can't be any other way, or there can't be a more effective way. I don't know, have you in your projects encountered that, and in the moment that you were deciding that this has to be the process?
Shimona, you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. Um, like I said, Sumana, it's not so much that we want to use play as a tool. The approach itself is a kind of a, a playful approach, and by playful, I guess is that's what you mean, right? It's this idea of balancing a direct approach with a more with a more roundabout approach of not starting with a solution, not starting as a position of an expert, not starting with an idea of what it should be and how it should be, but to engage with not knowing, to engage with uncertainty, to engage with letting go of your own status as an expert, or somebody in the process. So I think that approach itself, I don't know whether we decided to start at some point with the approach of play. That approach itself is inherently this idea of play. If you look at how play is described by, say, Schiller, or or how how we look at this idea of bringing people together in public spaces or public domains. So I think it's not really that. It's just as soon as you decide that you want to relinquish some power and some control, perhaps play is a good entry point for you to negotiate that in some ways. And like for me, as you can see, most the two projects, that the places that I worked in were really hyper masculine spaces as well, and I was a woman in that space. So that was also a way for me to negotiate that experience, I think. So yeah, that's how it becomes. And I always want people to think, oh, what's going on, this is super weird. So I think you want people to start with a sense of the unfamiliar, of not knowing what to expect, and letting go of what they think should happen. So then play becomes a natural sort of ally for such a process, I think.
Sure, sure. And Vaibhav, did you?
Yeah, I just have
Yeah.
a very short point actually, because I think I completely agree with everything Shimona said, and I had written down three of the points that she already said, so I don't think I'm going to go into those. But just one more thing, I think agreeing with what you said entirely in terms of how the moment you start thinking that we are not the experts, right? That if I have to go into any kind of problem and I'm approaching it to say that how am I going to engage with this, and you're thinking that I am just going to facilitate this, I am going to bring together stakeholders, I want to understand what people are thinking, and I want them to explore the different options that they have. At that point, you don't actually have many methodologies left, because I think in a lot of planning methodology, especially with respect to cities, where we have very technical methods of going about planning, And in a sense, Shimona, actually, I would argue that they are also very masculine in that way, that they are very fixed and they're rigid and they cannot be changed, and they have to be seen as strong, and they have to be seen in numbers, and there's no space for anything other than cognition, right? There's no space for emotion, there's no space for volition. And there, I think using play as a methodology becomes very important, because it allows for these experiences to come in. And as we go, we can manifest tools that we build for play in different ways to change the purpose a little bit. So if I want to collect information, I can use play a little differently. If I want people to understand or step into someone else's shoes, I can use play a little more differently. So those are options available to us. But the starting point, as Shimona also said, is that if I'm choosing this methodology, if I want to relinquish that power, if I'm thinking that the people who are affected by things in the city or whose experience it is, they are the people to drive it, then I think play automatically becomes a very, very crucial methodology to adopt.
Nilanjan, do you have to say something?
Uh, yeah, someone already said it. What is actually driver us to choose this methodology? But yeah, so in the same stream, so as we never thought about the that we can start it with this methodology, but when we are trying to engage with the idea with the neighborhood and started our project, it's actually gradually developed to and we find out it's not we find out a very playful manner to question some of the ideas and so yeah, so it's like it's I mean it's grew up like a very organic way, so yeah.
Yeah,
And with Neil, his topics are very taboo always. So it's all that I
Yeah.
feel if he doesn't start
yeah,
with play, he'll get beaten and chucked out.
You can't just go around and ask people that what would be the possible gesture in a public space. So we always try to
yeah.
find out like a very middle kind of path that is sensual, but still it don't directly hit in your mind. So yeah.
Yeah, and like y'all are saying, this giving up or loosening power and seeing what will happen always has this element of unfamiliarity. You don't know what is going to happen, and that might bring in its own challenges. So, have there been points where you felt really challenged by this process that you adopted in your projects? Was there a moment when you felt, oh my God, I'm getting stuck? I don't know, this is completely going out of hand, or, any kind of large challenges that, because there's communities involved, there's spaces involved, there's so much happening in that space, right? So, even in, I don't know if you have examples, if you want to share this through examples of something that when you hit a block.
Okay, I can try. I mean, so I think it won't be so much like it's definitely a block more than a challenge, because I think even a challenge becomes an opportunity. So sometimes whenever people ask us what were your challenges, very hard to say that, because that's what we're trying to see. How far can we push? When will people push back? So it's almost like that's part and parcel of the process in some ways. But I mean, when you're using play, also suppose you feel like you don't want to trivialize issues, right? So maybe you end up feeling like you're not doing enough justice to an issue since you are making it open ended. Sometimes you want to say something more strongly and you want to take a position, but you're, using this process of play. I'll give you an example, I guess, during the game at the men's bodybuilding club, right? So that was happening at the same time that the CA protests were happening, So I was feeling quite silly sitting and doing these games, when I just thought that maybe I should just, constantly just be joining protests, and why am I here wasting time doing this? I felt quite silly doing that. So I had to think, and that's why we did the second iteration of the game with the tiles and people questioning the symbols more, because we felt like, okay, yes, a play can bring people together. It can help people think through the ideas, but sometimes maybe we need to push back, and we can build that element of pushing back into the game. That's why in the second iteration of the game, you not only chose a symbol, but you had to share a very personal memory, you had to share some advice related to it, or you had to counter it. And one of the symbols was the symbol of the flag, because that came up a lot in the first iteration, where whenever I was asking people to create an image of an ideal man, the flag was becoming very important, as a symbol. So then the flag was there as a symbol on the tile. First of all, stepping on the flag, that was another thing. But anyways, people sort of, did that. And then it opened up conversations about CA, about what's happening. Should it be allowed? Is BJP doing the right thing or not? So I guess it was a challenge. It felt frivolous. It felt insubstantial. But if you pushed a little further and you tried to confront that challenge head on, then even play can be a very serious space, so I think that is something we was an example of when I felt a little out of depth and had to find another way to do it. Even beef, the symbol, people kept saying, no, we won't put beef, and then we are facilitators, so we didn't want to then impose our judgment in a space of play and say, no, I said I eat beef, things like that. Neil said, but I cook. But yeah, so it does feel frivolous, and sometimes you have to push back and see what the next step and can be.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Suman,
Vaibhav?
yeah,
Yeah.
I just come in. I think initially when you asked the question, I started thinking that is there something I have to say, but I think just a couple of minutes that I had, I actually had a number of points I want to share with everyone in terms of because there is often a challenge, not as Shimona said, in terms of just doing it or in terms of the conviction that we have, but more in terms of how it's to be done. Because it's experimental, because it is not conventional, it comes with the risk that often you need to carry it as facilitators. So the first example I'll give you that when games are used for serious objectives, then they have to be facilitated, and often the energy in the room has to be, the tempo is very important for the game to achieve its outcomes, and for that reason often facilitation becomes very important, because you need to know at what time to step in to maintain the energy level. You need to know at what time to step back, and that is a challenge, because it in a way limits the reach of the game, right? Often we talk about the scale of operations of anything that we do, or how many people can engage with it. So often in a game, you have to reduce that number slightly so that facilitation can be stronger, energy and engagement between participants can be stronger. The second thing I wanted to say was with respect to frivolity. So I think frivolousness is an element that is used in game design quite often, but in serious games where we are using, say, games for policy or games to understand serious consequences often, or looking at different objectives, there, at least we have been making a distinction, which is that, say, thinking that there can be frivolity in the process, but it need not be there in the substance. So, for example, the data that you have in the game or the kind of information that you're using, it really works, say, if it is based on the real world, right? If it does not seem outrageous or outlandish, or exactly as it makes sense that, if you're talking about identities or inequality in a game, then the experiences of somebody else should not be reduced to a frivolous idea. And so, therefore, in substance, having real world data, having information helps. But frivolity as a process can be very crucial and important to engage the participants, to bring them into even experience that kind of real world. And the final thing I think I want to bring up is a challenge that I'm not sure there is a way to overcome it, or if we even chose to overcome the challenge in that way as a success, is something specific to the game that we developed, Kattakati. because one of the ideas that we had for the game was that it should be a space where participants can come and laugh together, can have a good time. Because as Neil mentioned, that you can't just go to people and say, okay, tell me what issues you're facing or what is your experience of the city. You know, do you feel safe in the city? So we can't just simply ask that for no reason. So through the game, we also wanted to make sure there is a time, especially people who are working, who have limited time, that if you're coming on for 2 hours or somewhere or 4 hours on a week in once a week, then you have a good time, you laugh, you enjoy, and you're able to spend that time. But we realized soon after the lockdowns were imposed that a lot of the audiences we were planning to work with, the kind of issues that arose were entirely different, right? And they were unprecedented in terms of how a lot of migrant workers had to travel back, and issues in terms of access to food and basic fuel, and schools not being open. So at that point, we had to really reconsider that did we want to continue playing a game which evoked laughter, which evoked enjoyment as an objective for the participants? and and I don't have an answer, but I just wanted to put it out there because it was something to think about, that in the face of certain situations, where does a game stand, and say how the tool can be used, can it even be adapted to a different circumstance, or maybe we need to use something else.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Thank you, Vaibhav. We will now move on to questions from the audience. Here we have a question from Lakshmi Subramanian, who's asking, was language learning seen as part of identity building? How was language featured in the game? I guess this question is for Vaibhav. So I'll let you answer that, Vaibhav.
Okay, sorry, I'll start speaking again. So, Lakshmi, I think definitely language was an important aspect of the game. And as I mentioned, that we were trying to collect stories on many different aspects of belongingness, and language was one of them. And so we collected a lot of stories with respect to language, and our online tool will be going live soon. So I'll also pass the link on to IFA, of course, because they're our partners, and they can share it with all of you. So you can listen to those stories as well. But say the kind of stories we heard were about, say, whether I knew Kannada, or what was the effect if I did not know Kannada when I was taking a bus, or some stories were about the comfort with the language that they had wherever they were coming from, and how that helped them have a good day, or just be comfortable, say, when they were walking on the street. And a third one, which was also important or interesting, was how it changed their relationship with food, because they said they often saw similar food items, but because they could not immediately relate to it by saying the name, it didn't feel as appetizing. So it was very interesting, I think, in that way also to look at language. And because you asked about identity, I think that's the last thing that, in fact, some of the participants, when I was mentioning earlier in terms of, say, when somebody felt a part of Bangalore or when did they not. One of the things that somebody mentioned was that when they thought they were able to converse in Kannada comfortably, they became part of Bangalore. Now we belong.
Right. Thanks. The next one is from Sneha Joshi for Shumona and Neil. What inspired the creation of Hamdasti? How are socially engaged art practices affected by the pandemic, and how can artists continue working with communities and in public spaces moving forward? What has changed within this process?
So for us, we took a pause during the pandemic. It was not really because of I feel like when it was complete lockdown, of course, there was not much we could do because of the a digital divide as well that we had with the people we were working with. But it's also for personal reasons. I feel like Neil and I had other things and other commitments we had to do, which we're anyways planning to take a pause for Hamdasti for a while. So it's hard to answer where the pandemic had that effect and where our own sort of life trajectories had that effect. But what inspired Hamdasti, I think, was, for both of us, it would be different reasons for coming in. So I'll just share mine. I think actually mine was an encounter when I was in Bangalore as a student at a police station, and a very uncomfortable and unfortunate encounter that I had as a student. And it always made me think of these points of friction and these points where there's so much hierarchy, and what can artists do with it at that point of friction, at that point of hierarchy. And so that's why in all our projects, I think we try to find that point of friction where people are just a little uncomfortable and try and use play there at those points. There's no point playing doing such that you don't really need play when everybody's already very comfortable, and open to discussing and engaging. So that was for me, I think, something which drove this idea of what can artists do in these spaces of confrontation, and how can we blur those lines and soften those experiences. So I studied in Bangalore Srishti, and actually we did a lot of such. I mean, there are a lot of artists we work with who tried that, whether that's Jasmine Pateja and Blank Noise, and who tried to occupy these places of confrontation. So I think that was a big inspiration. And for Neil, do you want to talk about why Hamdasti was something more interesting?
Yeah. As I mentioned earlier that so being an artist, and I have a general art college background. I don't have but I always wanted to interested to work with public space. I wanted to explore the idea of printing from the perspective of printmaking. Definitely, what is the role of print in a public space? And from there, I think, as because Jitpur, and there's a like I don't know, but it's connected somehow. And when I heard that there's something happening on Jitpur, and Jitpur, as we know, that Jitpur has a lot of history of printmaking. So I was interested about it. But then the experience of Hamdasti really helped me to understand different other genres of like influence. What is the impact of social norms and social art practice? So it gradually came. So, but the first interest is to explore the idea of filmmaking in public space. Yes.
Thank you. Another question is from an audience member who is asking from Facebook. Can play be used for conflict resolution in a city with opposing stakeholders? We don't know who specifically this question is for, but I guess both of you can, both parties can answer.
Vaibhav, jump in, then we can add. Yeah.
Definitely. I think play can and is actually used for creating dialogue, because I think the moment we talk about conflict, it means that you're talking about means of resolution of the conflict, right? That is what we are trying to work towards. Or the first step before that, also, I would say, is uncovering the conflict. So definitely, I think games are a great way of having that conversation. So the city game that I showed towards the end of my presentation also is very interesting, because there we have different participants come together who in a notional sense are opposing in that way. So for example, we've had one session where there was an environmentalist and a real estate developer together in a session, or another one where in Bombay, where we were doing a session, it was a urban planner and a child along with many others. And so I'll just give you an example, that because you have to put a structure in the city, the urban planner decided to put a sewage treatment plant towards the southern downstream of the river nearby, near some residential area. And the child immediately objected, saying that no, but this is near the houses. There needs to be a park here. Now the thing is that, say, because it was a game environment, because there were people around, the urban planner had to respond, right? And because they were interacting with a different kind of stakeholder, there was no option to dismissively talk or to talk in a more adversarial way. they had to engage with what it is, and in that process, rethink the way they are articulating the requirements. So in that way, I think play is extremely crucial for one last reason, I think, because it helps you step into somebody else's shoes as well. So it helps you understand the perspective of the others. So another tool that we have created is for transport planning by the BMTC in Bangalore, but also by organizations or people who can try to understand what planning looks like or what transport changes can look like. And often we make demands of the BMTC to say that this is what must be done, or fares must be halved, the fleet of buses must be doubled. But say stepping into the shoes of a transport planner also gives me a sense that, okay, what are the constraints? What are they operating under? So it becomes a very crucial entry point to have that dialogue.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I,
okay.
I mean, one of the I guess could be like the kind of seminal kind of ideas or processes that drive. I think maybe a lot of us who work with this is Augusto Boal's Theater of the Oppressed as a way of using games and using play to negotiate conflict. So while I have not particularly been in a situation that can categorize as conflict, but that's always an inspiration, I think, for any of us working in this field to learn those techniques and adapt them to our needs today. So that's always a
There's one more question from Lakshmi. She's saying, play as practice. I really love unusual methodology for sure. But did you find any limits to the methodology, any hidden tensions, or was it only productive?
I think we spoke about some of the challenges earlier
Yeah,
in terms of the
you've already
methodology
done that. But
itself
is
and
there
the
anything
process.
else you want to add, or?
I guess, like I said, I think we've touched upon some of those, like the idea of laughter as in space within play, the frivolity, also this idea um, uh, of not being able to take a stand within the space of play and letting go of your own convictions and positions when you're in a space of play. I think those are some of the things that
Yeah.
we've all
I think just
discussed.
two things to mention. I think one is in terms of how we need to think that none of us are arguing that, say, play is the only methodology to work towards anything, right? So I think that is, in a way, acknowledging, say, the limit, but that is the limit of any methodology. That, say, anything that you're doing, we're saying that problems are complex, anything, stakeholders are complex, and therefore any kind of intervention that you want to do has to be very carefully thought about and will require multiple methods. So say for example, even what Shimona and Neil talked about, they didn't only use a game, right? That they came, they played a game, and they left. And similarly for us, you don't just play a game. So often you have engagement before that, you have engagement after that, you have discussions post that, you either design a module using that, or you have offshoots in terms of other kinds of outputs or publications, because that is how you can engage in a bigger way. Otherwise, it becomes very hard. And the second thing I want to say is that we just have to think about what the limit of a game itself can be in terms of using it for larger purposes of bringing about a change. And this I'm talking about in terms of a systemic or an institutional change. There we need to consider that if we are talking about institutions to say bring about a change, or if you want to improve, for example, service delivery or access to certain entitlements, a game in itself will not be able to get you that. It is a definitely an important thing to start that conversation, to negotiate as well, to run advocacy efforts, but we often need something more to go to the next step. That's all.
Okay. There's a question from Shubham Roy Chaudhary who wants to know how much role does physical space and proximity play in your work? And given the pandemic, would the dynamics change, and would that therefore affect outcomes?
Okay, how much? Hi, Shubham. I think definitely, I mean, physical space plays an important role because that's essentially what we are trying to shift in some ways, or that the dynamics of that is essentially what we're trying to play with. It's almost like one of the elements of the game, at least in our practice, you know, because that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to change, we're trying to question gendered behaviors in spaces, or what stories are represented in public. So that becomes very much the foundation of the game. um, and of course you can play games on, you know, in outside, you can play games in digital spaces, in private spaces, but the public domain is very much the space of coming together, of different encounters, of different perspectives colliding, that we, you know, is where we're engaging really. But how does it change the pandemic? After the pandemic, we've gone back. Many of Neelanjan, the puppet thing was happened actually after the pandemic. So in a way, hopefully it prompts more people to engage with public spaces and the public domain, as we are forced to step outside and forced to be out, you know, in spaces which we're not closed in. So hopefully it pushes people to go more into public spaces and engage more artists, creative people, to engage more with our cities and our public spaces than before. So I'm a very optimistic person, as you can see.
Yeah. I think we have one more question. No, so that's Lakshmi saying, really enjoyable. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, panelists. I think we can end this session now if there are no more questions. Thanks, Vaibhav, Shumona, and Neelanjan for a really exciting session. And like I
Thank
said,
you.
because IFA has also been running Project 560, it's something that we are sort of in touch with. You know, we understand a lot of the challenges that you face, a lot of the thinking that goes behind engaging with the city. So thanks so much for that. And the insights that all of you have been sharing is also feeding back into how we are thinking about the city as well. So thanks for that.
Thank
Thank
you
you,
for your
audience, for
support.
joining us on Zoom and on Facebook. Please come back on March 17th. We have the third episode under this series of play and practice, which is called Learning Through Play. And here we will be exploring arts education processes and pedagogies that have brought the element of play into classroom learning. So that's going to be another very exciting session. So please come back. This is on March 17th. Once again, thank you all very much and hope you have a very good evening.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you. Good
Bye.
night.
Bye, bye, bye.